Sewing a covered zipper placket. Covered zipper placket is another type of placket that you might have to use while stitching garments. Learning the method of stitching covered zipper placket will definitely help you in garment making. Objective: at the end of this class, you will be able to stitch a covered zipper placket. Let us first familiarize with the tools and materials that you would need to stitch a covered zipper placket. You would need cotton fabric, pattern square, tailor's chalk, straight pins, shears, a pair of small scissors, contrasting threads, hand sewing needle, zipper, iron box, sewing machine, measuring tape, seam ripper, and zipper foot. Now, let's watch how to stitch a covered zipper placket on a sample fabric piece. Step 1. Measure, mark, and cut out the required sample fabric pieces. Measure and mark 10 inches by 6 inches squares on a double layer of cotton fabric with the help of a pattern square, measuring tape, and a tailor's chalk. Using the shears, cut the marked square. Step 2. Mark seam allowance and position of zipper and pin fabric pieces. Mark a 1-inch seam allowance along one of the cut edges of the wrong side of one fabric piece. Also mark the position of the zipper. Now pin the two pieces with the right side together with the marked seam line on the upper side. Step 3. Stitch the fabric pieces. Start with a reverse stitch to prevent the seam from opening. Stitch along the seam line with a long stitch length up to the marking of the zipper. Use the reverse stitch going 2-3 stitches back. Then change the stitching length to normal stitch and continue to the end. Now end with the reverse stitch to prevent the seam from opening. Snip the thread with a pair of small scissors. Please note, here we are using a contrasting thread for demonstration purposes only so that it is visible, but otherwise one would use a thread matching to the fabric. Step 4. Clip the long stitches. Clip the long stitches every 1.5 inches so they can be easily removed later. Then open the fabric and the seam allowance so that the right side of the fabric is no longer together. Step 5. Iron the seam. Press the seam open. Open the zipper and place the right side of zipper on the pressed seam. Step 6. Pin the zipper to the fabric and baste. Pin the chain edge along the seam line from the top edge of the fabric up to the placket zip mark. Baste the zipper tape to the sample. When you finish basting, cut the thread and remove the straight pins. Close the zipper. Baste the other side of the sample. When you finish basting, cut the thread using a pair of small scissors. Step 7. Install the zipper foot. Remove the regular foot on your machine and replace it with the zipper foot. Step 8. Stitch the zipper to the fabric piece. Start stitching on the right side of the fabric, 1/4 inch away from the seam on the left side to it. Start with the reverse stitch to prevent the seam from opening. Sew down till just below the lock of the zipper foot, pivot 90 degrees and stitch over the zipper band up till 1/4 inch after the seam. Pivot again and stitch back up to the end. Finish the stitching with the reverse stitch. Snip the threads with a pair of small scissors. Step 9. Remove basting and finish placket. Open the seam over the zipper with the seam ripper and remove the basting thread pieces. With that, we come to the end of this class. Let's recall what we have learned. You learned how to stitch a covered zipper placket. Let's review its basic steps. Step 1. Measure, mark, and cut out the required sample fabric pieces. Step 2. Mark seam allowance and position of zipper and pin fabric pieces. Step 3. Stitch the fabric pieces. Step 4. Clip long stitches. Step 5. Iron the seam. Step 6. Pin the zipper to the fabric and baste. Step 7. Install the zipper foot. Step 8. Stitch the zipper to the fabric piece. Step 9. Remove basting and finish placket. You have now learned how to stitch a covered zipper placket. Take our next class to learn how to stitch a visible zipper placket.